All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about 3 ways to increase your closing ratio. Now, I haven't really rolled this out on a webinar before. I've talked about it a lot with our agents, but I just wanted to give you a real quick, refresher on what our mission and our core values are at CC Sales Pro and really what we're all about. Our mission is to provide opportunities and support to help sales professionals achieve a successful, productive life. And so in case you were wondering, what our company is all about, we don't have very many direct relationships with agents. Mainly what we are is sales training and mainly provide sales training. This company was really started because I got into the sales industry with merchant services about 4 years ago. And I was so frustrated by the lack of training. When I got into it, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. The company I was with was very shady, and they didn't really provide any sales training. I think we had a 1-day, 3-hour webinar, and that was the extent of my entire training in the merchant services industry. And even that really didn't even cover any of the sales training. So I was very frustrated with that. And so after about, about 6 months of, slogging through and figuring out how to do it, I started to create some, procedures, some sales training resources, and I started recruiting sub-agents locally. Real quickly, let me give you our core values. We have 3 core values. First one is always learning. We try to always be learning. That's the reason why I have webinars. I think this week we had 3 webinars. Some weeks we'll have 3, some weeks we'll have 4. But we try to have different webinars. We try to post podcasts and videos and blog articles. I encourage our sales agents to read other sales books. I'm always giving little short book reviews in the webinars of books I've read recently. And so we want to always be learning. That's one of our core values. That's something I'm very passionate about. Secondly, always living. I do not believe in this philosophy that in order to be successful in business, you have to lose your family, or that in order to be successful in business, you cannot have a personal life, you cannot give to charities, you can't invest your time in other areas. I believe that we could always be living. And, if you have things, a few weeks ago, I took a week off to take the teenagers from our church out to a big youth conference near Chicago. And so we're trying to always learning, always living. Lastly, always leveraging technology and procedures. Those are the 2 things that we really try to leverage. Our business is highly leveraged, and yet we're very leveraged by using technology. Because of our online resources, we don't have to spend an enormous amount of time answering questions from agents, because most of the questions an agent would ask, they can go onto our website, our blog. They could search our blog. They could look at our YouTube videos, our sales training programs, the 20-day Jumpstart program. All these different things are a form of leverage to allow us to help as many agents as we can with as little resources as possible. And we encourage our sales agents to do the same thing. We try to help them to create organizational systems and to use technology to really leverage their time in the field, and to leverage by using independent contractors to build their business. And so we're always trying to use procedures, good organization, and also technology to leverage our business so that we can really grow a lot faster and a lot more solid with less risk. And so we're always leveraging. So always learning, always living, always leveraging. All right, let's hop right into it. Now, I've got 3 things today to give you. This is going to be the top 3 ways that I believe you can increase your closing ratio. So here we go. Number 3, present a good offer. Present a good offer. Now, this is the number 3 reason, but it's almost a prerequisite. It's very important. I found that many sales agents, they will get an analysis back that has a cost-saving summary, and then what they do is they just walk right into the business and try to start doing a pitch. And that's not really very smart. You first of all need to stop for a second and make sure that you're offering one or several of these 3 items that are going to create value, because you need to understand what your pitch is going to be. What is the reason why the business owner should use you instead of who they're currently with? What's the value that you're presenting them? Now, you need to be able to offer one or more of these 3. The top one would be savings. That would obviously be most important. In my experience, when you get a statement from a merchant, we're going to be able to offer them significant savings about 70% of the time, okay? So we'll offer them significant savings about 70% of the time. The other 30% of the time, we might offer them a little bit of savings or maybe just close to break even. But 70% of the time, we can offer great savings. So number one, you need to make sure you can give them a lot of savings. If you can't offer savings, then you're going to have to go with definitely both of these other two to make up for that, and then some. So service would be the next one. What kind of service are you going to provide? Now, some of you might have a business model where you provide unbelievable savings and free equipment, but you really don't provide that good of service. They can get their service from the processor, and that's fine. If that's your business model and that's your plan, that's great. I know a lot of agents that do that sell to other businesses doing it that way, especially over the phone. That's a model that works really well. Last one would be equipment. Are you offering them free equipment? Are you giving them an upgrade free equipment when we can? If we want to use that hook to try to get people in, you can offer them free equipment. And guys, a lot of times because we offer free equipment, I think a lot of times we'll forget how important that really is to the business owner. There have been many times I've gone in and said, hey, I've got great news for you. I can match your rate that you have right now, and I notice your terminal is outdated, it's a little older, and as you know, normally these terminals are sold or leased or rented to you for quite a bit of money, but what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to match the price you have now, and I'm going to give you a free, brand new, upgraded terminal that you can use as long as you're with our service. And a lot of times on a smaller account, I've been able to close the deal simply because of offering local service and free equipment, even when I couldn't offer savings. And one other little tip I'll give you real quick here, if you can only offer them a tiny little bit of savings, let me make a recommendation to you. Don't even present that as savings. Just say we're going to match your rate and get it real close to matching the rate. If I'm only going to save somebody $10 a month, then I'm normally just going to put those savings into profit, because probably the profit's really low anyway. And I'm just going to, because they're not going to switch for $5 a month or $10 a month. I would just rather put that into the profit and say I'm going to match your rate. That's a lot better pitch. So before you go in to make the presentation, you need to make sure that you know what your value proposition is, what value you're going to offer the merchant. That's an excellent way to increase your closing ratio. And then once you get into it, you also need to be ready to overcome distrust. You've got to be able to overcome distrust. Understand that part of your good offer, part of the prerequisite for increasing your closing ratio is, number one, you have to have something good that you can offer. And then number two, that offer has to be able to overcome distrust. Now, I'm a huge proponent of the month-to-month agreement. For those of you that are still selling 3-year agreements, I would highly encourage you to find a processing partner. We only use processing partners that do month-to-month agreements, and I'll tell you why. The retention rate on a month-to-month agreement is actually higher than a 3-year agreement. Okay, now let that sink in for a second and think about that. Some of you have a misconception that if you don't have them sign a 3-year agreement, that they're more likely to cancel, but that's actually not true. And here's the reason why. People that get switched over to a month-to-month agreement, it is almost impossible to get them to sign a new 3-year agreement, because once they know that they can get it month to month, they really want to keep that month to month agreement. They don't want to switch back to a 3-year agreement, even if there's some savings involved. So what you'll find out is by putting them on a month to month agreement, you're going to eliminate probably 40% of your competition in your local market. And as far as agents out in the field selling, you're probably going to eliminate 70% of your competition, because most of the agents that are in the field selling were recruited by captive processors that have a 3-year agreement. So by putting them on a month-to-month agreement, about 70% of your local competition is going to be eliminated, because even if they come in and say, I'll save you 30, 40, 50 bucks a month, the client's going to say, well, do I have to sign a 3-year agreement? If they say yes, the client's going to say, you know what, I'm not interested in that, because they don't want to take that risk. They're happy that they're on a month-to-month agreement. So one of the really important ways to overcome distrust is to have a month-to-month agreement. Also, free equipment. That's a great way to overcome distrust. Lastly is to have a strong brand. And that's actually really important because, more and more business owners are looking online to see what kind of company you're working with. And so that's very important. But also, one thing I've noticed in the last 6 months or so, it seems like business owners are getting smarter about all this crap that's online. They're starting to realize that, every company you look up is going to have some kind of scam reporting. Most business owners, especially in urban areas, people where they're using the internet a lot, they're starting to figure out that there's a lot of crap on the internet. So they don't just believe everything they see. I found that more and more these companies are interested in the Better Business Bureau rating. But make sure, if you're selling for a processor and you've never looked up their Better Business Bureau rating, you have no idea how that might be affecting your business. So make sure that you do look that up, and make sure you find a partner where they have a good Better Business Bureau rating, because that is the number one source for small business owners to check on a client to see, a potential processor to see what kind of a company they are. Okay, the number 2 way to build up to increase your closing ratio is to build up to the big yes. Build up to the big yes. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now, this one tip right here, if this is all you get from the webinar today, if this is the only tip that you take with you, this will make a huge impact on your closing ratio. So pay attention to this one real quick. Again, if this is all you get, this will increase your closing ratio big time. It's very simple. Ask these 2 ownership questions before you start the presentation. So when you get there, the merchant has already agreed to go over the analysis with you. So when you walk in, you say, hey, Bob, I got that analysis. Do you have a few minutes to go over it? He says, yes, I do. Okay, so now you've got this guy where you want him. He is willing to sit down and go over the analysis with you. But before you break out the analysis, do this. Say, now, Bob, I do have a couple questions for you before I get into the analysis. If we were to get you switched over here, do you use a dial connection, or would you want the machine hooked up to an internet connection? Ask that question. It's going to get him thinking about it, and he might say, well, what's the difference? And he might say, well, right now it's hooked up to a phone line. Would it be better if it was hooked up to an internet line? And you could say, well, the cost would actually be a little lower for you if it's hooked up to the internet. Also, it processes a lot faster. You would need an upgraded terminal, but of course I provide that for free. In order to make that work. So it's a conversation starter, and it gets him thinking about that he's going to go with you before you even get into the analysis. Then the next thing I ask is, once we get that out of the way, I say, now, if you do end up deciding to go with me, would you want a free terminal? I do have these upgraded terminals, and I usually have one with me that I show him. And I could give you one of these as upgrade, or if you're already used to the terminal you have and you like it, I could just reprogram that terminal. Of course, it's going to depend on the type of terminal they have. You'd have to already know that. But ask them that question, would you like to upgrade to a free terminal? And you can tell so much from that response. Notice the way that they respond. That is going to get them to start thinking about using you, getting them into the right frame of mind to go through the analysis. And I'm telling you, that one little tip will do more to increase your closing ratio than just about anything else I could tell you. Other than the number 1 reason here, I'll get to in a minute. But this is a very easy thing to do. Just do this every single time. It'll increase your closing ratio. Next, be assumptive, not pushy. Go from analysis to page 10 to get initials. Now, let me just explain what that means. You get the analysis back that shows your saving summary, and once you get done with the saving summary, be assumptive. You're going to ask them, do you have any other questions for me about the analysis, and talk with them. But as soon as you're ready to move on, rather than closing and trying to say, what do you think, Bob? Are you going to try me out? Instead of saying some cheesy closing line like that, one of the best things you can do to increase your closing ratio is just work your way through the sales process. Don't take time for all these cheesy closing lines. Just go right from the analysis and say, okay, Bob, now let me show you on page 10. For us, page 10 is the pricing schedule. So the pricing schedule, you're going to go to that, and then you're going to start filling out the pricing schedule and saying, now let me just show you how this matches up with the analysis, and you go through that. One of the videos that would be really good for you to watch, if you go to my website, ccsalespro.com, if you click on agent training and then printing your first application, towards the end of that screenshot video, I actually walk through the paperwork just like I do with a potential client. So you can see what I mean by this, but you want to be assumptive but not pushy. So be very assumptive. One other way you can do that here, the next one, is to ignore negative statements and rephrase as a lack of information. Now, this is a tough one. Let me explain this. This is something I learned to do a long time ago. It's very effective, but it's difficult to explain. Let's say that I'm pitching a merchant, and they say to me something like, they say, no, I'm just not interested. I don't think it would work for us. Okay, if they said something like that, a very negative statement. I don't think this would work for us, I would rephrase that in a way that made it seem like it was my fault that I did not provide enough information. So this is what I would say. They tell me, well, we don't think that would be a good fit. I'd say, Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't really present all the information correctly to you, and I apologize for that. Let me just go over a couple things to make sure I understand this, because we are offering you, savings. So there's definitely savings there. We're also offering you the free equipment. So could I ask you, what is the information that maybe I haven't provided? What is it that maybe you haven't fully understood about my presentation that's holding you back from realizing that we do have a good solution for you? Okay, so I hope you kind of get the idea there. It takes a lot of work and it really is a custom thing. It depends on the phrase that they put out there, but basically whatever they tell me that's negative, a real negative feedback, I'm going to try to rephrase that in a way that makes it seem like it's my fault. I did not present you with enough information, because this is a good offer and you should go with me. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Again, I'm being assumptive. You should definitely go with me, but I probably didn't present it correctly. I might have made a mistake in the way I showed you it, or something like that. So I just try to rephrase that. Lastly, on this one, take it personally, but don't take it personally. Now, here's what I mean by that. Okay, sometimes in sales you got to fake it a little bit, and in this case, that would be the case. I don't really take it personally when someone tells me no. To be real honest with you, I could care less. And you know how it is. If you're out there in the field, you're talking to 15 people a day, you really don't care. If somebody tells you no, you just move on to the next one. It's not really a big deal. But in your pitch, you got to be careful, because you don't want to come across that calloused in your actual presentation. When somebody says, "Man, James, I really don't think I'm going to go with you." You can't be like, "All right, well, thanks, have a nice day." If you do that, that's not going to work very well. You have to take it personally in the pitch. So if they say, "James, I'm really not going to go with you," and you have to get that look on your face, and if you don't know how to get that look on your face, then practice in front of the mirror how to get that look on your face of total disappointment and like someone just stabbed you in the heart. You got to get that look, and then you got to just say, "Oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that. I was really looking forward to working with you. Boy, I just don't know what to say. Was it maybe something I did, or is there anything that maybe you still have some questions about?" I'm telling you, if you can learn how to say that in that way and with that facial expression, your closing ratio will go through the roof. But again, you have to learn how to take it personally, but not really take it personally. So again, I'll repeat that line, but I usually just get this horrified look on my face, and I just say, "Oh boy, I'm sorry to hear that. I was really looking forward to doing business with you, Bob. Boy, I don't know what to say. Can I ask? Was it something I did, or maybe some questions you still have?" So that's how I say that. So if you can learn to say that and have that sincerity and that that facial expression, and you can really make a lot of money from that one line. So there you go. So if you just get a one-liner from the webinar, get that line. And I will have the recording available on our webinar archive if you want to go back through. But have some kind of a line like that you say every time when somebody says no, and then if they're still like, "No, I just can't go with you," or whatever, and then you move on. That's fine. You didn't really take it personally. It's just you have to take it personally in the pitch in order to move forward. So hopefully you guys understand that. All right, are you ready for the number one way to increase your closing ratio? For today, we're going to talk about learn to listen. I've already talked about this a lot. You guys are probably getting sick of hearing it, but just listen to me. All right, learn to listen, okay? Let's go over this again one more time. Now, again, I got this from a book, so this is not my original idea. It's from The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but I would have to say that this is probably the best tip I could give you to increase your closing ratio. Learn to listen. The sales definition for listening, I just put this together, so this is not the official definition, but for the purpose of this webinar, the process by which you fully understand a prospect and are able to adjust your presentation accordingly. Listening is something that, as I personally have found in the last few months, I don't know how to listen effectively. I'm trying to learn, but I don't know how to listen effectively. And I also am learning that I don't know hardly anyone. My wife and I were talking about this a couple days ago after we read this book, and we were trying to work on this. Even with each other, we're trying to work on this. And it was interesting because we were talking about it, and out of all the people we know, we thought of one person that effectively listens. Out of everybody that we know, we thought of one person that effectively listens. So this is an incredible skill to have, and it's difficult. I'll be honest with you, it's hard. It's really, really difficult, and it takes a lot of discipline. But if you can learn how to do this, this will help your sales. This will help every stage of your sales process, your relationships, your life, everything. But let me give you a real quick overview of how it works, and then if you want to learn more, go to Amazon and buy the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you're like me, you'll get it on Audible and listen to it. But here's how it works. Let's talk about with merchant services. A merchant says something. All right, so the merchant says, I don't know. They say, I'm so sick of switching to different companies. All right, that's what they say. I'm so sick of switching to different companies. You're going to restate what they said in the way of you felt like or you feel like. So if they said to me, oh, I don't want to switch again to some other company, I say, you feel like you're constantly switching to different credit card processors. Okay, I restate that. You feel like you're constantly switching to other credit card processing companies. You're just constantly switching, you feel like. And now the merchant's going to correct me or refine that. And they're going to say, well, it's not that I'm always switching that much. It's just that every time I switch, it feels like I just get burned. And I say, you feel like every time a new sales agent sets you up with something, it's just you get burned, you're the one that gets screwed, and something goes terribly wrong. And they might say, well, it's not that it goes terribly wrong, it's just that maybe, they are never around. They'll never provide me with good service. And I'd say, you feel like the sales agent, once they set you up, they just desert you. And they say, yes, that's exactly what I feel like. Okay, so you see what I did there? I'm actively listening because I need to understand what the merchant is saying. And again, I can't accurately give you the whole thing here in this little short time, but the general idea is just that as someone is speaking to you, you listen to what they say, then you repeat back to them what they just said the way that you see it, and you want to understand the way that they feel. And then once they acknowledge that you understand how they feel, then you can address that concern. So now once I get to that point, so let me run through that again with you real quick. Somebody says, oh, I don't want to switch to some other processor again. I'm not interested in that. I would respond, oh, Bob, I'm sorry to hear that. I guess you feel like you're just constantly switching. And he says, well, it's not that I'm constantly switching that much. It's just that every time I do switch, it seems like I just get, burned on something. And I say, so you feel like every time that a new agent comes in or you get called and you switch over, you feel like you're the one that gets burned and something always goes wrong. And then he says, well, yeah, I do, but it's not just that. It's that the agent, I can never get any support. After I get signed up, the agent just doesn't provide me any support. I say, you feel like after the new agent sets you up, you feel like you just are deserted. And then he says, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I feel like the agent just deserts me. Okay, so you see where we've gotten now. Now we're at a point where the merchant, I understand the merchant, and he acknowledges that I understand him. Now that I understand, I can seek to be understood. So now I can say, Bob, that's a very valid concern, and I certainly can appreciate that. I tell you what I would like to do. If it's okay with you, I would really like to get a couple letters of reference from some local business owners that you might know. And that way you could contact them, and these will be business owners or people that I've been working with in some capacity for several years, and they would vouch for the fact that I would never desert a client after establishing a relationship with them. Now, Bob, if I can deal with that concern that you have and verify that I'm not going to desert you, would you at least be willing to allow me to do a free cost analysis for you? Something along those lines. So once I understand them, I can seek to be understood. And again, guys, for those of you that are married, learn this skill. I'm telling you, it's awesome. Warn your wife that you're doing it, though. My wife and I are both working on this together because otherwise, it's going to be obvious that you're doing something different. But it really does work really well. When someone says something, you'd be surprised if you continue to probe and try to understand them better and understand how they're feeling, whether it's a client, a spouse, a child, whatever it is. You'll be surprised how much more information you're going to get and how much easier that conversation will go. So that's a great tip. Thanks very much for being on the webinar. Everybody have a great day today.